From a $3 cursed sword
Worst $3 I ever spent.
to a whole treehouse home sold for a single wicked instrument.
I bought your treehouse. How? Acquired through legal trade. Marceline the Vampire Queen. In exchange for one lunatic base.
The land of Oo clearly has a strange economy, to say the least. So, how much does it cost Finn and Jake to polish their swords and run around adventuring? How much does it cost for someone like Princess Bubblegum to run her thriving kingdom? How much does it cost Ice King to be a general nuisance to the community? Well, today, I'm putting my economic skills to the test, and using these 5 handy-dandy categories, we'll find out once and for all the cost of living in the land of Oo. Let's start off simple. Even though most of the people of Oo are already made of candy, they still gotta eat, right? Well, let's start by looking at some of the places to get a bite around the kingdom, starting with the most important food of them all, pizza. Yes, there's a pizza place in the Candy Kingdom, named Pizza Sassy's, of course. The more you know. Great name, but what about their prices?
$200.
Blank-eyed girls by other blank-eyed girls touching their eyeballs.
$200 for a single box of pizza. Dear God. Let's compare that to the price of a full pepperoni pizza today. At Domino's, you can get a large, no-nonsense, 8-slice pepperoni pizza for $14. That means that this pizza is, oddly, 14 times the price we're used to seeing in real life. Oo's affordability ain't looking too good right now. Worst part of that is, this is really the only restaurant in town we know a substantial amount about. I mean, all you really have besides the pizza place is a couple of diners. Really, the only other prominent food-esque place in Oo is the Candy Tavern, aka the Dirt Beer Guy's Tavern.
Guess I'll just go back to eating criminals. I miss her.
So while we don't get an exact price for the grape juice those two are drinking, using our same math from earlier, let's just assume that this mug of juice is gonna be 14 times our current asking price. A big ol' carton, 64 fluid ounces of it, will typically set you back around $4. The usual beer mug will hold 16 fluid ounces, or 1/4 of that carton. So, let's say the price for a mug of grape juice is 1/4 the cost of the carton and tack on 50 cents to make a profit. $1.50 for a mug of grape juice is probably going to be the asking price today. So, what does that make it in Oo terms? Well, multiply that by the food inflation rate, and we get $21. So, in total, a full food and drink meal, if you eat out, is going to cost you a whopping $221. But what about if you eat in? Or at least prepare food on your own? I mean, with these prices, I'd probably always be eating in. Well, there's never really a full price breakdown or even an explanation for how a lot of the food in the series is found. For the most part, Finn and Jake just come across mounds of it on their adventures or are just given it after their adventures. Whether it be getting meat from Meat Man,
That's Meat Man's meat.
Do you think it hurts Meat Man when he gives us his meat?
I don't know. I can't read his mind.
stumbling across a bunch of bananas in the Nitosphere.
Oh,
Don't eat the bananas though, trust me.
But, not really. Oh, my stomach.
If you don't live in the eternal nightmare of the Nitosphere, you can always just get free apple pie for doing nothing at Tree Trunk's place.
I baked y'all an apple pie.
Don't let him eat it all.
It seems like for an adventurer, the price for food at home is just doing services in exchange for it. So, free? Sorta? It's bartering in a sense, which is a running theme with Oo's economy. Whatever it is, it has to be better than restaurant costs. Otherwise, how would Finn and Jake be able to constantly get away with homemade monstrosities like this?
what's for beef fast, Jake?
Everything burrito.
I don't care if you have a giant treasure-filled entryway. If those prices were the same as the pizza, there's no way Finn and Jake could afford that burrito. So, let's put it like this. We'll be generous and say that the residents of Oo, whether you're an adventurer, ruler of a kingdom, or just a candy civilian will eat out once a week, while any other food they'll either stumble upon in the wilderness or do simple deeds for. Heck, if you're made of candy, you can just nibble on yourself. Even with free food for the rest of the month, you're looking at $884 in expenses for going out to eat 4 times a month in OO. I'm starting to see why the King of OO was elected over PB. Anything to try and solve the food inflation crisis. But what good is all that free food if you don't have a home? And again, while we don't have too much info to go off of here, the info on housing prices we do have is kind of shocking. So let's start with Finn and Jake's treehouse. Those guys have the most luxurious hunk of wood planks and nails I've ever seen. And in the real world, you can bet it wouldn't be cheap to live in it. 8 rooms, 3 levels, secret compartments everywhere with a boat on top of it all. But how much would owning a treehouse like this, let alone maintaining it, cost in real life? Well, let's compare it to the closest thing we can. This home here is a modern, much lamer treehouse, but still has the main fixings of Finn and Jake's palace. A single bathroom, stairs leading up to the single bedroom. The only issue is it's vastly smaller than Finn and Jake's place, so let's look at that price. $590,000 for 922 square feet? All right, let's quintuple it. So in total, you'd be looking at a house worth $2,950,000 with 4,610 square feet to work with. For simplicity's sake though, let's assume Finn and Jake are renting this place at a rate of $1.50 per square foot. Each month, these two would be paying $6,915 in rent. And that's not mentioning repair costs for their flimsy wooden floorboards or gallons worth of trimming and watering to maintain the tree's health, and to repair when things like this happen. In OO, that's gonna happen more than you'd think. Let's say it costs as much to build a normal treehouse as it costs to repair a single bit of Finn and Jake's place. Lots of nails, screw, wood, tools, let's say an extra $1,500. Based on this treehouse supply site, yeah, it's a real thing, I'm being generous with the price. You know what? It's just repairs. Then we have to consider tree maintenance. Trimming and watering will likely come out to an added $350 a month. What this means is that in total, to rent their massive, towering tree fort, Finn and Jake would likely be paying somewhere near $8,765 a month. One issue. Remember that clip from the beginning of the video? The one where Jake's son reveals he bought Finn and Jake's treehouse from under them?
I bought your treehouse. How? Acquired through legal trade. Marceline the Vampire Queen. In exchange for 1 lunatic base.
Yeah, Marceline technically owned the place and sold it off for a single bass guitar. On average, those suckers are gonna go for about $2,000 a pop, but that guitar has 4 heads, meaning it's special. Let's multiply the cost by 4 and bring the total to about $8,000. Sounds like a lot, but remember, this is a one-time payment. No rent, no mortgage, you own it. And by the end of that episode, Jake even manages to get the house back from his son for the low price of a homemade clay ocarina. Estimating property values in OO must be hell. So, Finn and Jake probably only pay for maintenance, which, going off the numbers we listed earlier, still come out to a sizable $1,850 per month. But here's where things get interesting. What about the Candy Kingdom? Considering Princess Bubblegum owns the entire land, I don't think we're gonna have to add any rent to the picture, but how do you maintain a place where things like this happen so frequently? The kingdom is a giant monster magnet. No joke. So, here's what I'm gonna do. Let's see how much it costs to maintain Buckingham Palace and the City of London. What? It's the most prevalent kingdom I know. According to my research, it costs 34.5 million British pounds to keep the rickety royal walls of Buckingham Palace from crumbling, which in USD would come out to $45,398,548. All right, we're off to an expensive start. Now for the surrounding town of London, which for comparative purposes would equate to the rest of Candy Kingdom and its defenses. In 2025, the city had a budget of around $1.5 billion being spent on things like protection, environmental services, medical services, and transport, all of which are prevalent in the Candy Kingdom. So I think this number would translate pretty well here. So overall, the cost of PB's housing, as well as general maintenance for her kingdom, is gonna be a cool $1,545,398,548 for a year. In our monthly terms, this'll equal $128,783,212, at least. God only knows how much extra money will be needed the next time there's another world-ending monster knocking at PB's doors. But that's not the only kingdom we should be looking at. What about the Ice Kingdom? No residents, besides a bunch of penguins, and no housing for anyone really besides Ice King. Unless you count the snow golems, but look at what they live in. Something tells me the golem is the only one who knows about that cabin in the middle of snowy nowhere. No rent. So, what about Ice King? Well, he controls ice, and I don't think anyone is gonna challenge his dominance over a bunch of uninhabitable freezing mountains. By that logic, again, no rent, I'd say. However, maintenance is another story. And though this guy can create ice and snow whenever he wants, I reckon he's still gotta deal with the process of ice sculpting a bit to try and carve out the rooms. I'll make the brash assumption that he uses illegal penguin labor to get the work done for free, and only pays for maybe 15 sets of ice picks a month, with each coming out to $5. So in total, let's say the Ice King pays $75 a month in maintenance. Oh, and in case you were wondering about his electrical bill for video games and electric keyboards, remember, this guy can shoot lightning out of his hands and give life to robots. So no charge for electricity either. I shouldn't be surprised that Ice King barely pays a dime in home expenses, considering he freezes his butt on an icicle all day. But hey, I'm still a little bewildered. But with such a vast land to explore, you've gotta have a way of traversing it. Luckily, Oo's various form of magic and mystical freaky candy creatures seem to make getting from A to B a breeze. For instance, take a wild guess as how Finn gets to most places. Just go on, I'll give you a hint. You don't have to stretch your imagination for this one. So, riding your magical stretchy dog is gonna really save you some money on gas. Finn and Jake pay nothing for transport. But alright, the thing is, not everyone in Oo has a stretchy dog on standby, so how do they get around? Well, by public transport, of course, because yes, even in a post-apocalyptic nuclear candy wasteland, they still manage to have a functioning system of low-cost travel. Take note, United States. So, what all do Oo have to offer to the middleman? Well, for one, it's got this wicked train.
Hey, Mr. Conductor! It's my birthday!
Climb aboard my train, little boy.
Alright, well, you pay more than money when you hop on this train. You pay in discomfort at bare minimum, and at a maximum, you pay with your life.
Suspect numero uno!
Okay, maybe you don't actually pay with your life, because, you know, the whole murder mystery that happens on board is all a made-up birthday present for Finn, but I had to bring that up. Anywho, to make a long story short, the average price for a train ticket in the UK, which again is what I'm gonna be looking at here, is gonna be around $50 on average for a one-day trip, meaning we're likely looking at $100 expenses for a full day of candy person travel, if you're going somewhere far. Now, I'm not too certain how often a candy person is going to need to travel a large distance via train, but let's just say they travel somewhere on the train 3 times a month. That'd still be a solid $300 expense. Luckily, they've also got buses as an option for those shorter distances.
Check out this sweet makeout wagon. Life-giving megas, bro.
Yo, yo, yo! If you know anything about Ice King, you'll know why I'm confused he's riding a bus. We'll get to it soon, but for now, let's just note that a single bus pass in the UK will cost you $125 a month. You'll get unlimited usage though, so hey, you know what? better than those massive railways. In total though, if you're stuck with basic means of transport, you'd be paying a total of $425 a month just to get around. It really pays to know stretchy dogs. On the more royal side of the spectrum, Princess Bubblegum has a pretty interesting mode of transport. Behold, the Morrow. Yep, that's one giant falcon right there. So, let's look at falcon care costs. Biologists and ecologists say it can range from $200 all the way up to $2,000 a month to care for one, considering prices like food, leashes, mews, anklets, training, and all that jazz. So let's triple that, considering this is a huge falcon. Let's just call it a solid $6,000 a month for PB to go flying around on her giant bird. Honestly, all this talk of giant flying animals just makes me thankful we don't have to worry about that in real life. Imagine you're walking down the road and are all of a sudden carpet bombed by giant piles of elephant and falcon poo. That'd be... ugh. It makes me thankful that the Ice King just flies on his own with his beard. No defecation issues there, hopefully. Oh yeah, that also means his transport is free, I guess. Just goes to show you how cost-effective being a wizard is. But what do the folks of Ooo do for entertainment? Probably cower for their life while waiting for the next world-ending event to pop up. I mean, the Candy Kingdom has been victim to 2 zombie attacks. How do these candy people manage to stay smiling?
Ah, that's a lot of zombies down there.
Stupidity. Stupidity is how they stay smiling. But there are some little distractions from the danger of Ooo. Of course, there's the rough housing you can find on Boom Boom Mountain, but well, that's probably as close to free as you're gonna get here. Only financial risk is a hospital bill, but hey, we can't guarantee that. First off, let's take a look at the competitions. I think you're all gonna be pretty familiar with this song.
I know you wanna slump up on these lumps.
As hard as we all try to forget, we'll always remember LSP's horrible singing. But what we may not remember is that her performance was actually for a talent show. And hey, admission to that ain't gonna be free. Entry fees are pretty common in any competition like this, and that's not even the only competition in Ooo. Take for instance, the Wizard Battle. That's some album cover material right there. Just take a single picture in the middle of the fight. Any angle will do. But yeah, I can't imagine entry would have been free to that either, whether you're a contestant or a spectator. Also yes, there are spectators. Look at this still frame. See? I'm not crazy. And if you're more a sciencey type like PB, we can't forget about the Science Barbecue Convention that PB held. You know, the one where Finn made a black hole bubble and did this?
Stupid!
So yeah, let's say both admission fees and spectator entry fees, $15 each. And I mean, there's probably only one of these a month, so I think this is a fair price. But maybe you aren't a fan of live performances and want something more cinematic. Well, luckily for you, the movie theater of Ooo has got you covered, particularly with its drive-in theater. And although it definitely has a problem with PDA, it's still technically an option to pass the time, if you like your popcorn with a side of someone else's saliva.
Now, look at this cup. Look at this one.
Just try to ignore it and watch the movie.
Stop!
And yes, while nobody really seems to be eating popcorn at the theater in any of these scenes, it's mentioned repeatedly by Finn. You know, I bet the popcorn is as expensive as the rest of the food in this show. So let's calculate it. The average cost of a medium popcorn and a soda at a movie theater is gonna be about $12. That's already robbery, I know. Take it up with your local theater, not me. So, multiplying that by 14, the same thing we did with the food and drink earlier, we get an $168 expense for food alone. Alright, $12 ain't looking that bad anymore. Meanwhile, we don't really have a reason to believe the tickets would be any more expensive than usual. So, let's go with the also extremely expensive $13 average for a movie ticket. And in total, a trip to the movies with food and drink would cost a single person $181. Cinema snobs don't have it easy, folks. But of course, what post-atomic nuclear disaster-ridden world would be complete without video games? Oh yeah, BMO probably doesn't come cheap. Game consoles are expensive nowadays, and the current market doesn't even have one that can talk. The Mo Corporation must have charged a fortune back in the day for these little buggers. Luckily, that's a one-time expense. And even then, I doubt Finn and Jake actually outright purchased him. Rather, they just found him and brought him home to take care of him. Alright, let's be fair and say that maintenance probably requires a new set of AA batteries each month. A pack of 8 costs around $8, so let's say $2 a month for that. But yeah, just like consoles, games aren't cheap, and it seems like every time Finn and Jake plop onto the couch to play, BMO's got some new game for them ready to go. So let's call that a game a month. I'm gonna say that'll mean an extra expense of $60 USD each month, because that's the God-intended price for video games, not 70. The video game companies are pushing their luck. Thank goodness for Steam sales. So in total, $62 a month for video games. Nintendo, don't think I can't see you charging $80 for Mario Kart. I see you, and I'm sad. Finally, let's talk about some of these minor personal expenses that the denizens of OO will take in. Starting with maybe the most prominent expense you could think of for a land characterized by crazy battles, swords and armor. Finn uses swords a lot. Like, a lot. It's sorta his thing. And as such, I'm just gonna make a not so wild assumption that he has his sword sharpened quite often. An average sword sharpening is going to cost $30. So let's say after a long week's worth of battles, Finn heads to a smith to sharpen his blade on the weekends, meaning we're looking at about $120 a month for sharpening the sword alone. And of course, although Finn probably sharpens his blade often, he also breaks his blades very often. Heck, I'm gonna say most adventurers in OO break their sword often, and not everyone is going to be able to find great deals like a cursed grass blade for $3.
Grass sword. It's a bargain.
That it is, mysterious green man. That it is. So, let's say for each month, an adventurer may need to buy a new steel broadsword for, on average, $250. And of course, we can't forget armor. Most adventurers who aren't 13 years old with a magical dog for protection will need a bunch of metal to guard them from incoming blades. So, what exactly did Choose Goose want for this wicked set of samurai armor again?
That one.
Wonderful. I'll need a trade of equal value. I'll take the head of your dog friend.
Say what?
Well, we're back to the bartering issue again. What exactly is a magical dog's head worth in USD? Who's to say exactly? So again, we're gonna have to just rely on what our old friend, the internet, says. What does a set of genuine samurai armor cost? $4,199. Thank you, TrueKatana.com. Now we know how much Jake's head is worth. Ooh, 10% off my purchase of $129 or more. What about medieval armor, actually? Actually, about the same. The real big boy stuff is around $4,369. So let's just settle around the middle and say that Armor and Adventure Time is gonna cost you about $4,275 per year? Yeah, let's say per year. Divided by 12, we get an average armor expense of about $357 a month. That means, in total, adventurers in OO will be spending about $727 a month to keep themselves well protected against their enemies. Hopefully they're smart enough to steal swords from the folks they slay to save some money. Thankfully, we have a bit of a simpler cost here. Music is one of the biggest pastimes in the land of OO. But whether you're slamming some cymbals like the Ice King, or rocking a bass guitar axe like Marceline, you can always bet there's gonna need to be some upkeep on your instruments. Let's take the average of the drums and the bass for this one. To tune up a bass guitar and keep it clean will cost you a grand total of $100 a year, if that. But considering Marceline uses hers as an axe, we can go ahead and say she'd probably need to tune it twice a year. So let's say $200 a year, divvying out to an extra $17 a month to take care of her instrument. Meanwhile, Ice King's drums would take roughly $150 to tune. And considering he isn't swinging his set against demons on a weekly basis, I'm gonna say he only needs to tune it once a year, meaning he'll end up paying about $13 a month to keep his beat. On average then, it'll cost around $15 a month to keep your instruments being tuned up and ready to jam. Not too steep, Just make sure you have some cash to spare if you're buying the instruments in the first place. Remember how much that bass cost earlier? $2,000. Ugh. And finally, as the last little tidbit of extraneous costs, let's look at PB's science experiments. Again, I'm gonna compare her lab to a government lab in London, England, and see how much they spend on their science programs over there. In my eyes, that's about as close as we're gonna get to a good estimate of a kingdom entirely made of sugar's scientific research. Right now, the UK has a spending budget of £20.4 million for their R&D division, aka research and development. What does that encompass? Well, just about everything. Health, energy, environmental conservation, all of that great stuff. Sounds just like the sort of thing Bonnabelle Bubblegum looks into, though she probably has a bit more baking science in there. In USD, that'd be a budget of around $26,822,518, which means per month, Bubblegum would be blowing through $2,235,209. Some hobby. Huh. And all of that money, all of that work, just for her to create monsters like Lemongrab and Goliad, and then accidentally zombify herself. Oh yeah, money well spent. So, with all of these numbers crunched, it's time to figure out the average monthly cost to live in the land of Ooo. Combining all the food, we'd get a total of around $884 a month if you went out to eat on the weekends, and exclusively ate food you bartered for or found on the days you didn't go to a restaurant. Meanwhile, the average number for housing, accounting for all these varied numbers, would equal out to $42,928,354. Bubblegum's place really screwed that number up, so let's just look back at what Finn and Jake's treehouse would have cost per month with rent and maintenance. $8,765 a month. That's better, but still insane. That's what you get when you live in massive places, tree forts, and underground caverns, though, I suppose. Transport, on the other hand, will even out to an average $2,141 per month. Again, this accounts for those who don't pay because of their beards or stretchy dogs, those who have to rely on giant birds to get from place to place, or just ride an overpriced train. Entertainment is the easiest expense, with an average cost of only $86 a month. And finally, the personal expenses is gonna get awful with PB's big estimates yet again, but the average there will equal out to $745,317 a month. Okay, no, factoring out PB's government-funded shenanigans and just looking at weapons and instruments, we'll get an average of $371 a month spent on personal expenditures. And in total, this means that if your name isn't Bonnabelle and you don't have an entire civilization's taxation flowing into your pocket, the average cost of living will put you at around $12,207 a month. Man, Great Mushroom War really did a thing or two to the value of the dollar, huh? I'm still not over the $200 pizza. But that's all I have for today. Be sure to click the vid on screen for more awesome videos just like this one. Adios!